Okay, so going back to the beginning, we have onCreate, we set the click listener, and we call some function in there. Here's the function, it's empty. Let's go back to where we were last week, okay? So let me get rid of this. And last week we had this initially. And there's a bunch of problems with this, right? So we had first text value, get the first number dot text, right? What is first number? If I control click on it, I can see it highlights it for me right there in the layout, okay? So that first edit text, right? I'm calling that here. Pull the text out of that and put it in this val, first text value, because we know it's some text, right? Then second text value, do the same thing with the second number, right? Fine. Then I had this line before. Let me get rid of this one and show you this one. So then I said, number one, I want it to be a string, right? So feed that first text value. Well, I get a type mismatch because I'm trying to give it a string. I want a string because I said number one's a string, but I'm giving it an edit text, exclamation mark. Exclamation mark has to do with nullables also, okay? And basically the exclamation mark means that it is either, it's implicitly nullable, okay? So just to make it easy for you, when you see the exclamation mark, it means that it's assuming that there's a value there, but there might not be a value. Because what if nothing was entered in there? What if it was null or something, right? So, and this thing is not a string. So if I don't give this a type, right, I can see now the value of this is going to be not be a string, it's going to be edit text. But I want this to be a string because I want to do something with that, right? I want to take that string and turn it into an integer. So how do I make first text value, which is edit text, into a string? Anyone guess?
Not toString?
Yeah, toString will work. Okay, and let me just show you this next line, which was the same problem, right? Here, I said, change this to an int. I can't change an edible to an int because it's not a string. To change to an int. ToInt is expecting a string, but it's not. So the first thing I want to do is say, okay, let me go back here and say, set this first value, which is edit text, change it to a string, right there. Now does it work? Yeah. Number one is a string, because I forced it to be. If I get rid of this type and use it, what is this called when I don't specify the type and I just set a value to it? It knows a type from the context, which means it's type inference, yes. So now if I mouse over, it says, yes, val number one's a string. So I have a string. Great. Now, can I change this string into an integer? Yes, I can, right? So I would say, let me just grab my next line of code here. I can skip this one because you guys got that.
Do we have access to that text? Is it online?
No,
Is it for you?
I'm recording it for you right now though.
No.
Okay, so yeah, let me get rid of this whole function and replace it with this one. Nope. Let me val number one string value and val sum. Okay. Let me go to here. Okay, so now what I have, again, I'm pulling the text out of the UI elements on the screen, right? From first number dot text, second number dot text. But these are edit texts. These aren't strings. So I need them to be strings. So I said, okay, first text value to string, right? And then I can change it to an integer here. So number one, val number one is an int. Notice it's an int now, right? This one is an int because I took this string and turned it to an int. Number two, what does this mean? This means it's an optional or nullable, right? So either it's there or it's not. Second value, to string, to int. Notice what I did here. The first one, I have all these lines of code. there's a shorter way to write it. So for the second one, I said, no, just give me the second value, text value, change it to a string, and then to an int, and then set that here. So number 2 is an int. But I made it nullable. Why? Because what if in the UI they didn't enter a number? What if they typed in cat or dog? What's going to happen when I call toInt? Is it going to give me an int back? If I gave it a cat, it's going to throw an error or something, right? So what I was trying to show here is that this is one reason why you would use nullables. So ideally, what toInt should give me is an integer or null, if they did this right, and they're still working on this. Can you close the door, whoever's closest to it? Okay. So suppose toInt gave me back a null, if I put cat in there, right? Then this would mean that number 2, would it be an int? No, it would be null. And would that be okay? Yes, because I made it nullable. But then I need to treat it properly, right? Because now I said sum is number 1 plus number 2. I can't add up a nullable and an integer. That doesn't work, right? Now, why am I doing this in the first place? Let me get rid of this, okay? And just do this, okay? So forget anything I said about nullable for a second. So now I have number 1 and number 2 are integers. I have 2 integers. So I said the sum, add these 2 integers. Is that okay? Yes. So far I'm okay. So can I make the text, this thing, change to a string? Does that work? Let's find out. Let's run this app and find out if this works so far. If I play with it nicely and don't put cat and dog in there, right? So here's my screen. Okay, here's 1 plus 1 equals question mark. I'm going to hit tab to add. It gave me 2. Let me change this to 3. Or 2 and 4. And hit tab to add. So is it working?
Yeah.
Is this a solution? Are you sure? What is this gonna do? Let's find out. Tap to add. The app crashed. And look at this. Okay? So I had a fatal exception. You see this? Where is this in the console? The app crashed. In my console, I have an error. So when your app crashes or you have some issue, look at the error. It tells you what went wrong. Okay? Fatal exception in the main thread. Okay? Java.lang number format exception for input string cat. Okay? So I have an error. So I need to handle this error. Okay? So there's a bunch of things I could do. One is if I checked if this gave me back an int or not, right? Then I can use it or not use it. How can I check? How can I use these nullables? So there's an article that I told you guys to read. It's a comparison of Swift and Kotlin. Okay? Even though we don't use any Swift in here, but there's some concepts in here you should know about. So let me just search in here for Safecast. And I have an example right here. So here's something called ID. It's an int question mark, which means it's a nullable int. It either has an int value, like 1, 2, 3, or it's null. Yes. So then I said, if ID is not equal to nil, because here it's set to nil, right? Nil or null? Should be null. Maybe it's nil. Okay, I can't remember now. Let me copy paste this code and put it in my project just to check, because I don't remember. Let me just put it down here in the same function. So it's like, what is nil? It doesn't know. This should be null. Yes. So I need to update this tutorial. It's wrong. ID, it's a nullable. So here I set it to null. Like if I don't do anything here, what is this now? It's null still, right? Because I didn't give it a value, it's going to be null. It's the same as this. Now, if ID is, what does this exclamation equal mean?
Does not equal.
Does not. Here, exclamation means not. So if I say, like, let me put a, oops, what did I do? Okay, if I put, I'm just going to put this in a comment. If I put not less than, okay, this is not greater than, not equal to. You guys get it? This is equal to, right? You should know all this. This should be reviewed. So if ID is not null, then do something. Otherwise, do something else. Get it? That's just an example. So let me get rid of all this. So I could say, like, suppose that this toInt gave me back an int or null. Then I could say, and then I would have properly said that this is nullable. This is a, sorry, this is of type int nullable, and this is a nullable. And then I could say here, if number 1 is not equal to what? Null, right? And, is it double ampersand? Yeah. And number 2 is not equal to null. Then do something, like this line of code, right? Let me try this, okay? Otherwise, if it is null, that means something weird happened, right? With that information we got, and the toInt didn't work. So else, okay, I want to make that question mark. So this one, it doesn't know what sum is here. Why is this red? Why is sum red here? You guys should know this since from before the break. Why is sum going to be red here? Yes?
Because it's out of scope.
It's out of scope. It doesn't know what sum is, because sum is defined inside this if statement. So the scope of this val is inside the if statement. So it doesn't exist outside of this. So if I'm going to use it outside that, I should define it above, but I'm going to use it only here. Okay? I'm going to say answer text equals sum.toString. But if it was something weird, then I'm going to say answer text is equal to error. Okay? Okay, so I throw some error. I'm actually pushing that error to the UI by assigning it to the text of that label, right? So let me try this. Who thinks this is going to work and who thinks it's going to crash?
I think it will work.
Okay, let's find out. Place your bets, okay? What am I doing? I wanted to debug. Okay, so here's the app. Let me hit tap to add. I get 2. Let me change this to something else. 3. Okay, who thinks it's gonna still work if not crash if I type in cat here? Let me put an emoji too. Can I do that? Ooh, look at that. Tap to add. Ready? The app crashed.
Because you're assigning the second one instead of both, I think, right?
I said if either one is null, don't do this. Do this.
Oh, yeah.
But guess what?
You say it's not.
Where is it crashing? It's still having the same error.
It's giving
I'm giving it a cat emoji. I'm passing that to toInt. Okay, let's look at toInt. I'm going to control. So toInt is built in, right? I didn't write toInt. It's built into string, right? It's Kotlin.text string kt class inline one. So let me, even though it's built in, I can see the source code in Kotlin for that. I can look at the source code for strings or whatever I want. Just control click on toInt. It jumps into that. Did I write this code? No, this is like built in, right? So here is, where to go? ToString. Yeah. So I'm going to control click on this or command click, and it goes here to the actual function definition. And it says it's an inline function, toInt. It returns what? An int. Okay? But notice now, See this comment? What is this? This is a comment, right?
Yeah.
Notice this at throws, and the line of text before that, and see these brackets around int? What is this? What kind of comment is this? This is a comment that can be used to generate documentation. So if I go back and I look at the actual documentation for this method, which is here in the Kotlin thing, there's toInt. This documentation is generated from this comment using that thing I talked about in the beginning. It's like JavaDoc. I forget what it's called. KDoc. Okay? So in your final project, if you use this before, so here is a function, okay? And then above it is some comment. So it uses this comment, and then this at throws means it throws something. This brackets int, look how it turns out here, okay? It actually, it formats in a certain way. So if you want to know how to do it, it's basically using Markdown, okay? But, so it says parses the string as an int number, okay? And returns a result. So this word, this line of text, parses the string as an int number. Look at that. It's right here. Parses the string as an int number. And these brackets, these braces mean that it's an actual int type, which makes it a link when it gets into the documentation, okay? So how to do that, you can look up KDoc and what that, but you'll get extra credit if you use that kind of documentation. You don't have to, but if you use that level, you'll get extra credit in your final project. Anyway, so throws means that this function either will return you, it'll try to do the thing, but if there's an error, it will throw an error. It throws an error. So we need to capture that error somehow. We need to try this, but it could fail. Okay? So there's something called try catch. Okay? So you guys all got kind of where I was going with this. I'm going to just delete this, okay? I'll copy paste it into, where does this start and end? This ends here. I will copy paste this, just give you guys later as one example. Here. Okay, so I've saved that for you for later. So let me rewrite this. So I'm not going to use nullable here. I want to do try catch. And the place, I'll give you a hint, where it's dying, where it's failing, as soon as I say here, toInt, right? It's dying here when I'm passing it a cat and not an integer. So I can't call this and just use it because I could crash my app, right? Because this could fail. So because it can fail, I need to not do that. I need to just try it. So let me do try, okay? And it lets me do this. And then I say this stuff, okay? So try to do this stuff, okay? Now, notice there's an error. It says expecting catch or finally. That means I need to have here catch, okay? And then I can do something there. I'm going to get rid of this and add another code block.
Well, before you convert it to int, why don't you validate it first? I think that's what the problem is. You just converting whatever coming into int. So if it's cat, you're trying to make it int. I think you have to validate what's coming.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing now. I'm doing that now. So I can't call toInt with something that's not an int, right?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is correct. And let's do that too, okay? What he's saying is, I should never call this without knowing that this has an integer value in it. But how can I know that? How can I validate that's an int or not? I can check, is it equal to 1, or is it equal to 2, or is it equal to 3, or is it equal to 4 as a string? Because this is a string. How do I know it's a string that's the same as an int without saying toInt? I could check every possible combination of digits. That would take forever.
No, yes. Is it equal to a number, something like that? We just cover everything.
But it's not a number, it's a string. And I'm trying to convert the string to an int. How do I know that this string is an int or not? How can I check that?
I don't know how to do that, but I think you have to check the string for some type of code that checks in to see if.
But it's not a not. The thing is, this is a string. It's not an int. So there's no way to validate that it's an int when it's not an int. I know it's not an int. It's a string.
But can't you check in the string to see if there's a number in the string?
The only way to do that is to try to convert it to an integer. And so I'm trying that here. But this can fail if I pass it something that's not convertible to an int. So if it's not at the number 1 or the number 2 or the number 1, 2, 3, right, 123, it's going to fail. It's going to throw an error. Now what's this here? Expecting, so catch, it needs an error. So I got rid of the parentheses here. So catch has parentheses and then some error. So I'm going to say like E type error, okay? So this is the way you do it. This is the syntax. And if I didn't know this, I could like Google it and find it like somewhere like here. Like I Googled string to int, and I found that here's a way to do it, okay? They have a try catch, because this one, if I just say to int, this can crash your app. This semicolon doesn't belong there. It should never have semicolons, right? There's no need for it. So I want to try and then catch, okay? And then it says number format exception. So why are they using number format exception? If I look at toInt and see what it throws a number format exception. So instead of just catching an error, I should try to catch the number format exception. And it's thrown if the string is not a valid representation of a number. Okay? So let me go back here and change this to the error type should be number format exception. Okay? And then here, I will say, I want to just show the user the error, which normally is not a good thing. You want to show users, your end users who don't know how to compute a program. They're just your customers. They don't know about programming, right? You don't want to show them some weird error. So actually, let me do that. So let me print to the console so I, the programmer, can see, right? Print e dot message, for example, or localized message is fine too, okay? Let me do it print line, so it puts a character return at the end of it. But I want to show the errors to the user that makes sense to them. So what could someone help me out here, what do I do? I want the question mark, which is answer text dot text to equal some message of the error. Okay.
Error, please enter.
Please only use numbers and not some nonsense, you idiot.
They're gonna delete the app straight.
Okay. So maybe you're trying to be humorous, I don't know. Okay, or maybe you want them to delete the app, like he said, maybe they'll, okay. So now, if I did this try and it worked, what would I do after here? This works. Number 1 has a value. Number 2 has a value. So now I know they have values. So now I can say, okay, sum var, right? Var sum, actually val sum is equal to number 1 plus number 2. Right? Now I have an error. Why is that? Because I left these as nullables. Let's just make them non-nullable. Okay? So, number 1 plus number 2. And then, let me set the answer text dot text equal to the sum dot toString. Because it's an int, I want to give it a string. Right? So, who thinks this will work and who thinks it'll crash? Raise your hand if it'll crash. Raise your hand if it'll work. Okay, let's find out. So, I'm going to unlock my phone. I'm going to debug the app. Show you my screen. Let's see what happens. Here's the app. I'm going to hit tap to add. it shows me 2. I'm going to change this to 2 and 34 and hit tab to add. It shows me 36, but it's formatted in a weird way because I didn't get enough room to this, okay? So this is a good reason to test your app. So I should fix this, right? But anyway, let me change this to a cat. What is 2 plus the word cat? Let's hit tab to add. Please only use strings. The error message comes there, but it's all in one long line.
It works.
It works. Okay, so it didn't crash. So try catch works here. Now let me try something else. Let me put no value and no value. So I hit delete as many times as I can. And I can't even find my tap to add button because this UI is messed up. So let me rerun the app.
Because of the error.
Yeah.
took out its space and
So
put
let me
it
do this
back
again.
the way down.
There's something wrong with my UI layout. I should fix that, right?
That's a weird app.
So let me hit tap to add. It works. Let me get rid of. Let me not put cat because it's going to give me this.
The error message is too long. It's going to put you.
Yeah. So let me get rid of all the text and hit tap to add. So it even works if there's no value, which means that no text is not the same as null. What is no text called?
No.
No text is an empty string.
Yeah.
It has a value.
Yeah, it's an empty.
It's a string with no characters in it. It's not null. It's different.
It's empty.
So that's why it doesn't crash. If this could be null, then I would need to make these nullable and check to make sure they're not null when I use them, like I did earlier. Right? That makes sense? Okay. So last thing, and then I'll give you guys a break and lab time, and you can finish your calculator app. Oh, and then, no. I'll give you a break, and then I'll show you about Git, and then I'll give you lab time. I'm going to spend very little time on Git. Maybe I'll do more next week. Okay. And there's lots of videos on it, so you can watch that. But you should use it as an assignment for that. So anyway, how can I fix this? You guys help me out. How can I fix this?
Fix what?
This string. Actually, I'll leave that up to you. You can figure that out.
Go
Okay.
back to
It's-
Go over to the XML file.
Yeah, I want to fix it in the layout.
the constraint and then.
Well, this is a linear. This is a linear layout. It's not a constraint layout. So I could fix it in the property of this question mark. Okay. So I click on here, question mark.
Increase the width and then.
So if I look at layout width, it's 9 dp. This label is only ever going to be 9 dp. What should it be?
Percentage?
How about wrap content? Remember I talked about this last week. Let me do that, hit stop, and debug again.
So it doesn't give you percentage, just.
Wrap content or match parent means fit the parent container, right? So not percentages. So now I have this. I hit tab to add. Great. Let me put in here a cat. So 1 plus cat. Little emoji. Hit tab to add, and it even wraps my text for me. Okay. And I always have to tell it to make sure you wrap the text, but here it did it for me. Okay. So that's a smart control. Now I don't have a space here between the equal sign. I can add that. I can make it equal space, right? Instead of just equals, and that would put a space there. But you guys can figure that out, okay? So let me get rid of this and put a 4, tap to add. Let me give it a big number. That's not a, okay, let me give it a big number and another big number and hit tap to add. And it's wide enough now to fit the whole number, okay? Because I said match the content, whatever's inside it, or wrap content.
Yeah, wrap.
Yeah, wrap content. Means whatever's inside of it, make sure you're wide enough to fit that.